Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time here. Today I'm doing a little quick flip on this jewelry box I got from Goodwill for $1.99. I don't know how old it is, but it's from Taiwan, and most newer stuff is imported from China instead, so it might have a couple of years on it. My little teeny tiny screwdriver was still too big for these teeny tiny screws, so I'm using a little Dollar Tree paring knife. Because you gotta do what you gotta do. There were just 4 screws holding this in, and the brackets that were holding them were all broken, so I just kind of tossed those to the side. We'll deal with that later. This has like a faux stained glass daisy thing on it. Not cute. The velvet inside of here was a little dingy. It wasn't dirty, but I was still trying to get it out, and that never happened, so we'll deal with that later as well. I'm using Dawn Power Wash to clean off the box. You just need a degreaser. I used Dawn Power Wash because it was right there. You could also use something like the Awesome Cleaner from Dollar Tree. Anything that'll cut grease. So I just spray on the Dawn Power Wash and then just kind of scrub it all around. And now I'm taking just plain water, wetting my rag, and I'm just going to wipe all that off, because whatever you clean it with, you want to get that off before you start prepping it for painting. Got the Awesome Cleaner right there because that little decal thing did not want to budge. So we're going to spray that, push it off to the side. Let God sort that out. Now I'm using a 220 sanding block to get off the shine. This isn't really necessary with chalk paint because it'll kind of grip to everything, but I wanted to scuff this up just a little bit so it has some tooth, because it was pretty shiny. You don't have to go and try to remove all the finish. That's not necessary. Just make sure it's not as shiny. And now I'm going back in with the water, wiping off all my dust. And we're scraping this again. I think I get most of it off this time. I like those little rags. I think I got them from like Family Dollar, one of those dollar stores, Family Dollar, Dollar General, something like that. There's like a 25 pack. And I mean, they're not the greatest rags that you can see, but they're good for stuff like this. So I use them a couple times. They fall apart. I get new ones. Now, because this was dingy and I couldn't get it out, I decided to dye over it using chalk paint. You can do this with most fabrics. People do it on furniture. I don't know that I would do that. The paint is very watered down. You can see at the top of the plate how thin it is. And all I'm doing is brushing it in there and letting it seep into the velvet, in quotes, fabric. You're not painting it, you're just kind of dyeing it. And I'm doing this first because I'm going to go back with a darker color, and I want to have to be like too careful with the yellow. So if I painted it first and then I went back into the yellow, I was worried I was going to get the yellow on the darker color and then whatever, so I did it like this. So I'm just kind of touching at the top and letting it seep down, and then going over, making sure everything's done, making sure I get in between all the little ring holders. And it stayed pretty soft. Not as soft as it was, but pretty soft. Now this paint I'm using is not diluted. It's a little diluted, but not as diluted as it was for the dye. This is Behr chalk paint in Back to School, which is the number 2 pencil color. I redid an entire dresser with this. I loved it. This paint's $20 a quart, but that still makes it cheaper than most of the designer chalk paints that are out there, but not as cheap as the Waverly chalk paint. This is Agave, this little bottle, which is probably enough to do 2 or 3 jewelry boxes of this size, is $1.97 at Walmart. And it's a decent paint. I painted a bunch of stuff with this that doesn't really get any wear, so I was interested to see how it was going to work on something that had a lot of wear to it, you know, that I was going to be handling a lot. So I just painted that little inside rim, taking care to make sure I didn't get anything on the velvet, and now I can just kind of go in there. And if you're chalk painting something for the first time, you do not have to be the best painter in the world. You just got to get it on there. Make sure there's no blobs or drips or anything like that. get it on there. You have to go with the grain, you can go against the grain, you can go back and forth. I just wanted kind of a smooth finish, so I'm going with the grain. And this looks kind of like a Tiffany blue, but it's really got a little hint of more green in it. And the reason I used the yellow all over was because the Behr paint is slightly better quality, and I wanted to use that as like a primer. And when I distress back this blue-green color, I want some of the yellow to show. Because painting something and then distressing it is all about adding layers and layers of paint, so when you go to sand it, or however you're going to distress it, they all peek through a little bit. And I think this is my second coat. Yeah. I'm just going over, making sure all that yellow is covered, just so I can uncover it, you know, in about 30 seconds. Now I'm doing this little scratch test to see how the chalk paint has held up. I let this dry for about 4 hours just because I want to make sure that it's dry and also cured. And it has a 2-hour recoat time, so giving it that 4 hours made sure that I wasn't like sanding through paint that was still not completely cured. And I started out with a 220, and this is maybe a 180. I like to start out with a really fine grit and then work my way up. And you can always wet distress this. I just feel like if I'm using something wet, which I do later, I don't have as much control over how much paint I'm taking off. Like, it's more random. And this, I don't know if y'all noticed, but I like to be in control. Okay. Do with that what you will. So I've done the top. I'm going around this little rim right here, and I'm only doing the top right now, the top section of this. But I like how much wood is coming through. I like how much yellow is coming through. So that's where we're at. That's still a little, that's going to stay moist for a while just because you added so much water to it. Or I added so much water to it. And right there, where there's a lot of distressing, that would naturally be where you're opening it at, so I made sure to put more distressing there. Now I've mixed a little bit of the Agave from Waverly with a little bit of Ocean, which is a deep, dark, like royal blue. It's not really navy, it's still pretty bright. But I'm using that and kind of dry brushing it around the bottom half of the box. I'm doing this to deepen the color, to give it a little bit of an ombre. I mean, it's a very subtle ombre, but it's there. And I'm also going to take this opportunity while the paint is somewhat wet to do a little bit of distressing. So I'm going in with my paper towel, and I'm just going to wipe that back off. And this is not only making the paint settle in the cracks and the grooves and the crevices, it's also going to take a little bit of the original base color off because we wet it, and that original blue is now reactivated, and it comes off easily. This is Waverly's white wax. It is cream colored. I have never seen something so cream colored in my life. I don't know why they call it white, but it reads as white once it's on there. I am putting this all over the box, but I don't want to show you guys because I'm shy. Okay, there it is. Putting this all over the box, and you can wipe this off right away. You can leave it for a couple of minutes. You can leave it for a while. I like to put it on, finish the whole box, and then go back to where I started and start removing it. It stays really sticky if you put too much on, and you can eventually buff that out, but that's not really what I was going for. So this is probably a minute or two after I've first applied it. I'm going back with the same paper towel I used earlier, and I'm just wiping it off, making sure that the white settles in the crevices and the details. And this is also taking off a little bit more of the paint underneath. But again, this is like random. It's not as detailed as you can get with a piece of sandpaper or a sanding block. So see, I'm focusing a little right there, and it took some more of that paint off. Now I'm going to go back. There's no more product on the brush. I'm just dry brushing with what's left on there. because I do want to highlight the high areas without having to apply a whole nother coat of wax. But I'm going to dab at that, wipe at that, whatever I need to do to get the look that I'm going for. Now I'm going to scratch at this little thing that was in there that I could not get out, left this footage in for some reason, I don't know. But you can see here how you can see a little bit of the yellow, you can see the white wax, and you can see the original wood. Really like the way that came out. Now I'm still checking. Okay, these are still a little wet. That's fine. I'm going to wipe off my hinge because there was a little bit of paint on there, and it doesn't matter if the chalk paint's on there, but, you know. Now this is a piece of glass all scraped and cleaned and Windexed, and I'm sticking in here with some, like, E6000. I end up having to put a weight on this, and later on, once it was dry, I did go back and add some UV resin to make sure it was sealed in there. I was going to use some silicone caulk, but I had UV resin instead, and that's pretty much it. It looked really good. I was loving the color contrast between the mustard and the agave. Yeah, cute little fun project. It took me, you know, I mean, things like this, it takes, I think I had like an hour and a half of footage, but that was also me waiting for it to dry a lot and, you know, hitting with the hair dryer in between, which you can do, but make sure you you give it that 4-hour window of curing time before you start to distress. Putting my paint on top to let that dry, and here it is with my jewelry in it. This is the dresser I was talking about that I did with the back to school paint. So this came out really good. It's available on Etsy if anybody would like to buy it. It's a little boho. Maybe it's probably like 8 inches. It's not very big, but I mean, you know, it's got a, if you don't have big man fingers, you could probably fit more than 3 rings in there. But yeah, give this a try. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.